G'day guys, and welcome to another vlog from Phil and Jen in the Philippines. I'd like to thank everyone for all the subscriptions. Jen's really happy with the subscription rate, which is baffling to me, but anyway. Today's vlog is the third installment of businesses I've tried in the Philippines. Now, just to bring everybody up to date, in case this is the one you actually trip across before you see the other two. The first business Jen and I got involved with was a fishing orientated business when we first got to Miitum, and that lasted about 12-14 months. Total disaster. We went through all that. The second business was Jen's magnificent salon that we went through. That was a sort of like a break-even situation, so we were getting better. But at this stage of the game, 4 years into living in the Miitum area in our new house, we really hadn't been that successful, and we were no closer to our end goal, which was to create a business that the family could slip into and possibly support themselves. But I must admit, at this stage of the game, I was ready to throw my hands up and give it away, which is unusual for me. It had virtually defeated both of us. We hadn't really thought of anything. But what had happened that preempted the third business is my brother-in-law, Edsel, and his partner lived across the road from us. And whilst we were, I was away, actually, during around the COVID time back in Australia, and trying to make ends meet. Edsel and his partner attempted to open a little resto bar thing across the road, but of course they were underfunded, and they did a typical Filipino karaoke, a karaoke videoke type bar. But as I said, they were underfunded. They were working 7 days a week, and the profit wasn't there. And as much as they tried, they just couldn't keep it alive, because as we've discussed beforehand, little things happen in the Philippines to drain away funds, and they were really underfunded. And we all know, starting any form of business, if you're underfunded, it's a very, very difficult situation, let alone being here. But he cracked on with that business through thick and thin during COVID, with all the restrictions and everything, and they worked themselves basically to death until it just got too much for them and they stopped that business. And then I returned to the Philippines, heard their tale of woe, but a kernel of an idea, a germ of an idea was, I was quite surprised that they battled their way through for 3, 4, 5 months.
Yes.
It took a toll on them. They were happy with the returns, but the way we run businesses, they did.
Yeah, and plus the COVID that time.
Yeah, well, COVID was on.
Yeah, and then on and off, they closed all the establishments.
Yeah, so really, as much as their effort, they put effort into that particular business, the cards were stacked against them, and so they closed up. So we were sitting around, weren't we? And again, I had a look at the infrastructure. That's the kids. Hold on. There was movement at the station as the word was passed around. Anyway, that was our youngest having a bit of a laugh. What had happened was that COVID was drawing to a close. It was virtually dead, and everyone's sitting around, and everyone was trying to get back into a situation of making money. And of course, COVID had stripped the entire area of any funds, and people were defeated to a certain degree, and the provinces were really hit hard. But the thing about it was, and the thing I couldn't, it was staring me in the face the whole time to a certain degree. One thing about fishermen, and we're in an area of fishermen, is they love to drink.
Yeah.
The whole area likes to drink, and of course,
people in Mindanao.
Mindanao, they're heavy drinkers.
They are heavy drinkers.
Yeah. And
and there's no outlet.
No, there's no real entertainment and whatever. There's definitely no bars in the area that we're at. So he was obviously creating a situation that had, some future if it was done correctly. So we were sitting around the table in the infrastructure that he'd created, which was very, very basic. And they were talking about the bar, or as he called it, the bar, the resto, and its demise. And it just got me thinking. And then Jen and I, after the conversation, went back, and another motorcycle. It's a little bit earlier here tonight, so you might hear a few motorcycles. But we went back and I brought it up and we discussed it. And the lessons we'd learned, which was not to go too big, not to employ, too many people, but even though we would be employing, well, we wouldn't really be employing, because the idea always was for the family to have the business, and it didn't matter what it was, we were eventually going, and how much we invested, we were going to hand it over to the family anyway.
Yeah.
So,
no, the idea was that just to establish how they are going to run it, and then after that we will just let them go.
Hand it over.
Yeah.
So we said, we're stubborn, or I'm stubborn, and I thought, let's give this a third go. And I promised Jen that this would be it. If it didn't work, we would give up on trying to do the right thing by the family. And as it happened, Jen had a piece of land that was under Prenda, which she wanted to return, which means that she had an amount of money coming in, which was about 150,000 pesos, coming back from handing this land back. Prenda is something that you probably don't know about, but it's something I can go into when it comes to the video I'm going to do on land acquisition. But anyway, she was going to get about 150,000 pesos. I had money, but I thought, well, okay, and she was quite happy at that stage to assist the family with this 150,000 pesos. So what we did is we sat down again with Edsel and his partner and said, listen, we're prepared to back you.
150,000 is like $3,000.
Yeah. It's about
almost $3,000.
Yeah, it is. It's $3,000 US. So it's not a huge amount, but it was going to cost more than that anyway. But that was Jen's contribution, and we spent a lot more than that. But anyway, we decided to talk to Edsel about it, and the only proviso we had was that even though he tried hard and it was working, we had to convince him that just listen to us for a little while. We're going to suggest things to you, to change, and it will become automatically more profitable. And you don't really have to do too much more than what he was already doing, but under better conditions. So that was, and with some trepidation, he said, yeah, well, okay, we'll give it a go. And we agreed.
Yeah.
And we told them we're going to have to be a little bit strict. So we put all the ground rules in place before we did it for the third time.
Yeah, a karaoke, videoke bar, but with a twist.
Yeah, it was that. You can't open a bar of any description in the Philippines without that hideous karaoke.
Loud.
And what they use here is a coin-fed and operated karaoke machine. And the way their mentality is, the customers put it in like a jukebox.
Yes.
That's the easiest way to describe it. And look at all the money that eventually comes out of the jukebox. But of course, that's shared with other people, and there's a myriad of, you only get a share of that. And it wasn't the most economical way to do it, because the real money was in alcohol. And I tried to convince them of that particular thing. The other thing everybody's got to understand about in the southern areas, the way they drink down there is Tanduay, which is the local brandy, or rum or whatever they drink here, which is in about a 26-ounce bottle, I think it is, or a large long neck bottle, and large long neck bottles of the two beers they have here, which is San Miguel and Red Horse. And usually what occurs is in these country areas, they come in and buy a Red Horse or a San Miguel or a bottle of Tanduay. That, remember this, they can buy at any sari store. So the mentality and the attitude is, we can't charge too much because they'll just go down the road and buy it there. And so you can imagine that having large bottles and everything, a group of people might only buy half a dozen tanned wire bottles between a group of them, and they're only making 10 or 15 or 20 pesos per bottle. So it takes a lot of work to make any profit. So the biggest thing we had to convince them was to change their thinking, wasn't it?
Yes.
Which, as I stated before, is very, very difficult to do in the Philippines. They're very skeptical, and
Yeah, especially in the province.
yeah, in the province,
Where we come from.
yeah, they're stubborn in the Philippines, but in the provinces they're rock hard as far as getting anything to change and to get something into their heads. But that was part of the agreement we came up with to actually invest yet more money, and they agreed eventually.
Yes.
So what was the first thing we actually did? I think it was to fence off the premises, wasn't it?
Yeah, we fenced the premises, and then we made the second floor.
Oh, well, just getting on the...
We painted, no, we refurbished everything. We
Yeah.
repainted.
We didn't actually... Once upon a time, we would have raced in and built buildings and built, a decent standard of things. Well, previous businesses have taught us that for all that effort, there's no return on that, and there's no real appreciation. So what they did have there, we may have renovated slightly,
Yes.
but all we did was give it coats of paint with,
Because we have the infrastructure was already there.
the land
Yeah,
was there, the infrastructure was there.
There we just add on to it.
The
and-
first thing we had to convince them was this: if you can get alcohol all the way along the street,
Yeah.
we've got to restrict people coming in and out,
Yeah.
specifically, to buy alcohol. So we had to invest in a fence,
Oh yeah.
which was a big thing. They couldn't understand why we didn't invest in a fence. And I said, the object of the exercise is to get them in the door, close the door, and have them
Yeah.
drink. So that was one thing. So they agreed to that, and we went ahead and we fenced the premises,
Yes.
which was one of the only properly fenced premises
Yeah.
for I don't know how far. But anyway, here we were sitting on this block of land. It was totally fenced up until about six or so feet, 7 feet, with a gate at the back and the gate at the front, and we could then monitor who came in and out of the properties. Then we had to convince everybody that we had to charge more money.
Yeah. And that was very, very difficult.
That was difficult. Oh, because naturally, Filipinos are a little bit pessimistic. Like they always look at the worst case scenario, and they don't.
What if?
What if? There's always, we need an option. If this happens, that happens. They try to cover all their bases, and they don't like taking risks.
Yes, we don't like, because if we take risk, no more.
Yeah, and
That's it.
So it's hard to convince them. So here I am saying we are going to, instead of making 10 pesos out of a bottle, we're going to make
100%.
Yeah. Well, out of the bottles,
Yeah.
I said we're going to make 50 pesos. But I don't want to serve tanned wine in large bottles.
Yeah.
And of course, how I want to serve that is in a cocktail format. Because we all know that you can break a bottle down, and if you start buying it by the nip. And just as an example of this for the viewers, I'd had a lot of experience with licensed clubs and hotels and pubs. I was an owner of a hotel in Picton in New South Wales, and then I also ran pubs and clubs in Papua New Guinea. So I did have a good understanding of pubs and clubs and how they operate. Okay, we're doing this on a very minor scale, but and I know it's difficult to introduce Western thought into a Filipino business, but I was convinced once they actually tried it and then saw the profitability, that it would work, and it worked.
It worked.
It worked, much to their, because...
Until now.
Well, anyway, it worked up to the point for a couple of reasons.
Yes.
The fillers have a very sweet tooth. And of course, if you're mixing cocktails and mixing with fruit juices and
Yes.
things like Black Russians and
Yes.
whatever,
And condensed milk.
and condensed milk and all this, as long as you make it sweet and it still has a kick, all of a sudden they were trying things that they'd never tried before, and it was still getting them well, as they like to get, pissed as crickets, you know. But we were making, 100% on a bottle or 150% on a bottle simply by breaking it up. So once they saw the profit coming in, it was happy days.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
good
this is
word.
very good. And in fact, from being hard Tanguay drinkers and Red Horse drinkers themselves, they actually started to switch over to cocktails. And we were serving it because they equate value with volume.
Volume, yeah.
Yeah. So we were, instead of giving them a bottle of Tanguay, we were giving them jugs of this stuff so they could pass it.
1.5 jug.
So they could pass it around the table, and because it had been watered down, for want of a better word, with juices and condensed milk or whatever it happened to be at the time, the mixture of drink, instead of sipping it and passing it around the table as they usually did, they were knocking it off left, right and centre. And of course, the more they drank, the more they ordered. So that was a real success.
Yes.
The other thing that was a real innovation for them and took a lot of convincing was, I said, get rid of the karaoke, the pay-in karaoke. And that was very difficult.
And give them free.
Yeah, I said, and then we will supply them free of charge. That will be your hook. Because all over the provinces, they have to, the patron has to keep pumping, 5 pesos or 10 pesos in to get the karaoke. And I had to convince them, by the time they took their share out, they're only getting for every 4 minutes 1 or 2 pesos, which was their share. If people are waiting around for their song to come up, they usually cut the night short. But if they don't have to pay for it, they'll sit there and drink. And I said, your money, you've made a great deal of money out of the drinks. Give them the karaoke, that's your hook. And Philos love free stuff, don't they? So as soon as everyone found out it was free, of course, they inundated the place. Then we had to convince them not to work 7 days a week.
Yes, and no credit.
The credit thing was a huge thing, because that broke the business as well.
Because in the province, everybody knows everyone.
Yeah, and the problem is,
The friends.
if they believe that to have a business in the province, they've got to give credit, otherwise people won't come. I had to convince them that, to stop paying for somebody else's habit, because inevitably with credit, they keep mounting the credit until they can't pay for it. And then it becomes embarrassing asking for the money. And that's the old loss of face thing. So I said, if they can't pay, they go home. That's as simple as that. And it actually worked. It was a big uphill battle, wasn't it? But because we were in charge for that short period of time, and I was very strict with it, I said, it's easy when they ask for credit. Blame me. Say, the boss, forget this thing. Stop boasting about the fact that this is a family business.
Yeah.
Make me the villain and say, I own the business. And they would give credit, only this man here owns it and won't allow it. So I took it didn't matter to me what they thought of me, and it gave them an out as far as they could then refuse credit and blame me. And of course, no one would ever come to us, because she was known as, the maldita, the bitch of the place, because she was married to the rich white guy, which it wasn't true, of course, but that's the way they perceived us. And no one would come up and argue the point about credit with us. So that got us out of the credit situation. So now all of a sudden, these were massive changes for these people to understand. We said, we're not working any more than 3 days, and we're not opening, because what was happening is when you're open 7 days a week and the fishermen come in and unload their fish, they want to start drinking at 7 in the morning. And of course there may only be 3 or 4 or 5 fishermen there, so you're working all day while they're getting pissed as crickets, and then someone will drift in at night. The labour wasn't, and the effort wasn't worth the profit in the old days. So I convinced them, instead of going 7 days, go 3 days. That was a big struggle too, wasn't it? Because they thought, we're going to miss out on money. I said, how can you possibly miss out on money? As far as the club or the resto bar.
Yeah, and then the crowd and the guests. I mean the crowd become
What?
the guests. We have different crowd that that time.
Oh yeah.
No more like this
I-
fisherman.
Yeah. Well, what had happened because that we
It
put the,
become popular.
yeah, and the prices went up, and of course the fishermen resented the fact that the drinking hole wasn't the shitty old drinking hole anymore. This was for the area was very upmarket, and as you can see, I'll keep overlaying photos, and you've probably seen a couple. I don't know, I haven't edited it yet, but you know, to give you an idea of what the place looked like. So anyway, we'd reduced down from 7 days. We'd changed the booze pattern because I said, don't be afraid of your customers and don't let your customers control you, as I had done with the fishing business, and we'd let the clientele control us in both businesses. And well, we learnt from that. And I passed it on to Edsel. I said, don't let your customers control you. You dictate the terms if they want to have it.
Yeah, because we are trying to be nice.
Yeah, and that was a part of our downfall in the previous two businesses.
Yeah.
If they don't, I had to convince them. If they don't want to come, don't worry about it. You know, once we clean the place up, we'll get people who come further afield. And it happened to be correct. So we made all these changes, and then we turned around and said, okay, rather than just a place where people come and eat and have a snack here and there, we put on, I said, if the fellows like things like sissy, and they like things like, well, what else did we serve there?
I know.
Lumpia,
Yeah.
and, you know, which is a
But maybe
bar
60.
snack type thing.
Yeah. Finger food.
Finger food, yeah. So, okay, we'll do it correctly, rather than going away and buying peanuts, and we'll charge for it. So really, in the back of nowhere, we had a business that no one had ever seen as far as run like a Western business. We finally explained it and they could understand where the profit comes from. We bought in stock control and things like this that they'd never ever done before. You know, I know it sounds ridiculous, but a lot of the businesses don't work on a stock control system. They just run the business till it runs out of stock, live out of whatever business it is, and then worry about at the end of the day how they're going to fill it up again. Well, we had a situation, whereas it seems silly to you, I know, that, you know, if you took the money out, you didn't take the 100% away and lived on it. If you had a great night, you know, whatever was the turnover is not the net profit. And finally, they were starting to realise that they've got to replace the stock that has been drunk on that night, and the 20,000 pesos or so they made that night, 15,000 pesos had to go back into stock. As basic as a system as that we all scoff at, there is no concept in rural Philippines, in the provinces, of that when it comes to business. They are not good business people until they're taught how. Anyway, so we had all that. We had free karaoke, and then we decided to have entertainment.
Yeah, and then
nights.
we became popular, of course, because
Of
it's
course.
new. And then we had the event every Friday.
Yeah, Friday night.
Yeah, we made sure that we had an event, like special event every Friday night.
And it wasn't a bigger than Ben-Hur type event. It was surprising. We decided to utilise Facebook, which was something no one ever thought of there, to promote our own business, which, or when I say our own business, Edsel's business, the family business, and advertise that every Friday night, come hell or high water, there was entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's a place starved for entertainment.
Yeah.
What that entertainment was something different each week. From something as ridiculous, we had hot dog eating competitions.
Yeah, from Miss Gay to Miss Gay.
To Miss Gay.
A band contest.
Yeah, everything.
Acoustic, anything that we can think about.
And we used to sit down on the Monday and think of the entertainment we'd promote all week. Because we didn't have the budget for anything. We'd give away prize money, but we had a budget, I think, what was it, 1,500
Yeah,
pesos.
1,500 pesos. And we take it from the
gate.
entrance. Yeah.
And that was something else we did. Robbing Peter, rather than give it out of our profit, we convinced everybody that whilst there was entertainment on, people would pay 20, 30, 50 pesos to get in the door for the entertainment. And of course, we'd take the door money, and that would be the prizes and the payment for the band or whatever.
Yeah.
All of these introductions were very difficult until they actually saw. And Philos are one of these people that have to
To see is to believe.
Yeah. No promises. And they will, up until the point that they see it and it becomes consistent, they still don't believe, which makes it very, very difficult. After saying all that, and we were trundling along quite well. We weren't making a fortune, but we were making enough money for Edsel and his partner, and to have some savings and to pay off his motorcycle and all these things. And of course, from time to time, for the family to come down and borrow some money off Edsel and not from us. Yeah. So we covered all that. We were successful in doing what we set out to do. 2 businesses before this one. It took us a long time to realise what worked and whatever. And it's very easy for people to turn around and say, "Oh, you should have done that in the first place." But even though it seems very simple to us, these were major changes that took place. And of course, to a Westerner, we don't think that it has very much substance, especially a Westerner of my age, that a club or a resto bar and whatever, in the West, that's a temporary thing. Over here, that could go on forever. And, it took me 3 businesses to realise the profits here are small, but as long as they're constant and the people doing it can wrap their heads around the business, and they are quite happy with the small, constant profits that come in, and that's what we learned over the 3 businesses. And, it took 3 businesses, and it took a lot of money lost by me. Money I was happy to lose. Well, when I say happy to lose, I knew I ran the risk of losing. No one's happy to lose money. But I was going to give away to the family in the first place. But I knew at the start of all this, I could have given $1 million pesos to my father and to her 2 brothers, and probably still come back with money in my pocket from what we spent. So I'm not going to sit here and say, it didn't cost me a great deal of money, because it did. But if I'd passed over $1 million pesos, and I was smart enough to know what these cultures are like, if I'd given each of the families $1 million pesos and said, "Don't bother me again, and don't bother Jen," and we've done it, within 6 months, they would have been knocking on the door again as brokers when they started. And that's not knocking them. They just have never seen that type of money, And having said that, there's no way I would have given them $1 million pesos. It just developed into, that's how much we spent over that period of time. And it's easy for people sitting at home saying, "What an idiot you are." And I suppose, and I had to convince Jen, because it was money out of her pocket and whatever. My money became hers and vice versa. But that enterprise allowed us to move away, or to be free of obligation.
Yeah.
For the rest of, or for a significant part of the rest of our lives. Because now we can always turn back and we can say, "You had the business," they can understand the business. There's no reason why that business should fail, because they'll always drink there. So don't come to us anymore. And it's been successful. They have not come to us for money since that particular business opened, and they're still working at it today. So, okay, it cost $3 million. It shouldn't have cost that much over 3 businesses. I had the money. I was willing to spend it. And it was worth the freedom of my wife and our freedom from the constant worry of knocking on the door to do it. I'm not suggesting anyone else does it that way, but that was something I felt good about doing, and Jen felt good about doing, simply because they were so reliant on Jen beforehand. Now, with a clear conscience, she can move on. So that is the story of the 3rd business. Anything you want to know? Well, there was one question in the comments about why with the house. By now, a lot of you have seen the videos with the container house that Jen and I built down there, and we still own it.
Why we are not living there, why we're here,
etc., etc., etc. As marvellous to the West it may have been to be, on the beach under their idyllic palms, hanging in a hammock with very little to worry about and whatever. After a while, the isolation becomes a problem, and Jen's still a young woman, and there was plenty of things we wanted to do, and it would have been selfish for me to say, well, I'm all right, Jack, I've seen the world, I've done this, I've done that. The other thing was too, because we're responsible for two relatively young children, their education wasn't the best in the provinces. Now, it was very important to me that one day we may go back to Australia, who knows, but we've got to cover all bases. The level of education, if I took them back, wasn't to the standard of Australia. That's not to say they couldn't get to the standard of Australia if they had a better education. So we decided to move for the sake of the kids' education, so we came to Jimageti, our own sanity, and we came to the conclusion that even though we made this enterprise for the family, there was always the temptation, if things got a little bit tough, they would still attempt to knock on the door and say, look, we're in a bit of trouble. And I didn't want that. So that's why we left. The house is still there. It's still on conjugal land, which is land owned by the family and Jen and whatever. Yes, we could have sold it had we wanted to and gone through the exercise, but we decided that life is unsure, and that's a house that simply by virtue of the fact that it's made of steel and whatever, and with a minimum amount of maintenance, it'll be there for a long, long time. If something was to happen to me, she's got somewhere where she can return to the kids. So we may look at the exercise of disposing of the property once we get into a more permanent situation, or I build, a dream house number 2, or we never know what's around the corner. But anyway, that's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's not too long-winded, like the videos have a tendency to be. Subscribe, people. Thumbs up. Share if you could. That's a new thing. I'm overcome with the amount of response we've had to these videos, and I really do appreciate everyone out there. As I said before, we love reading the comments. It gives us something to do during the day. Jen and I are always hitting the computer and reading the comments. We try to answer. As the numbers grow, it's becoming more difficult, but that's what we're doing. So subscribe, thumbs up, share, comment. Love yous all, and we'll see you in the next vlog. Jen?
Bye-bye.
Say goodbye to the world.
Goodbye, world.
Cheers for now.